wired. And so my consciousness has never changed. I still have all of the exact same parts of my self-essence that I did when Kristin was living with adaptable consciousness condition and had over 20 different people in this brain and body. And so that's my favorite thing about this concept, is that the power is so expansive. It doesn't matter who or where you are. There are potential benefits for deep transformation. Because the causality of stress isn't the situation. The causality of stress is how our brain and our body are reacting to the situation. But as consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of healing internal attachments creates brand new regulatory protocols. Can you believe that? It's crazy. It's so incredible. So as consciousness is up here just applying this idea and teaching the brain and the body to socially engage with its own being beyond all awareness, the brain and the body are like, okay, I'm taking notes. Okay, we got a new regulatory protocol on the respiratory system. We got a new regulatory protocol about oxygen flow. There's a new regulatory protocol that's going to improve the regulation of the heart that is beating. There's all of this stuff happening beyond awareness. And the process of that is fun and enjoyable and easy and tangible and so practical. And it's just genuinely an enjoyable journey. Self-essence never changes anything about itself. Yet it experiences greater depths of liberation. Welcome, beloved soul friends, to a brand new adventure into the known documentary series and implicit revelations case study created by yours truly, Kristin Windsor, consciousness consultant. I invite you to play background music while listening to and watching the following video. Choose some relaxing tunes and play them quietly in the background to amplify your healing journey experience. Have an incredible adventure diving deep into understanding and healing unconscious body-minds to liberate self-essence and transform personal experience from the inside out. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being you. Hey soul friends, I'm super stoked that you're here exploring this. Before diving into part 6 of thesis number 29, I highly encourage exploring the first 5 videos that discuss thesis number 29. This video here is part 6, and there will be a lot more power in exploring this if you've looked at the first 5 videos first. So I highly encourage you to explore those videos before diving into this one, and you can discover more in the video description below. Namaste, soul friends. The divine love and light in my consciousness sees and honors the divine love and light in your consciousness. Blessings to every part of you. When consciousness teaches the brain and body to socially engage with itself, the process of healing internal attachments indirectly reprograms brain-body systems. So there's all these different regulatory protocols wiring in the deepest regions of the unconscious body-mind, and it automatically affects all the different energetic flows throughout the brain-body system, far, 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 far beyond awareness. And in the process of applying thesis number 29 from the Implicit Revelations case study, the entire brain-body system gets a reboot. All of the different regulatory protocols start to improve and heal and become restored and expand into a greater sense of thrival and well-being. Attachment systems bridge worlds between the unconscious mind, which provides navigation regarding self and life, or personal identity, and how that sense of self navigates and interprets reality instinctively. Attachment systems bridge worlds between the unconscious mind providing navigation and the unconscious body, which affects regulation. And so the deepest regions of the unconscious body and the regions of the unconscious mind, those worlds are bridged through attachment systems. How implicit memories affect navigation, how regulatory protocols affect brain-body activity, and how implicit memories affect regulation, and how regulation affects neural activity and processing. All of that directly depends on the well-being of internal attachment systems. This references theses number 2 and 3 from this Implicit Revelations case study, and also briefly touches on the pyramid of personhood, which Kristin created several years ago. And you can download an older copy of the pyramid of personhood from my free gifts through Kristin's Consciousness Consultancy at kristinwindsor.com/gifts. And while you're on the website, please be sure to check out theses number 2 and 3, which provides further insight on these topics. Explore the complete Implicit Revelations case study collection at kristinwindsor.com/known. The Implicit Revelations case study has been genuinely the most unfathomably remarkable and astoundingly profound journey of a lifetime. Kristin began this case study several years ago, and if you've watched part 1 of the Known documentary series, you'll notice that there's been just a little bit of transformation over the past few years. The entire structures of this brain and body are completely different than they were a few years ago. And Kristin began cultivating and applying the concepts that I'm now sharing here in thesis number 29. Kristin began creating and nurturing and embodying those ideas back in 2018. And the journey from 2018 to who and where I am today in 2022, the key component of that transformation, healing, restoration, and expansion directly stems from consistent application of these ideas, where consciousness teaches the brain and body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments. When Kristin started creating and applying these ideas in 2018, she was living with adaptable consciousness condition, where there was over 20 different people inside of this brain and body. And none of them had complete connection with the body because of chronic severe dissociation. And so back then, there were different people in this brain and body, and the different states of consciousness learned how to socially engage with themselves, even without connection with the body. While living with adaptable consciousness condition, applying thesis number 29 helped break down amnesic barriers so that states of consciousness had improved communication with one another, gaining co-consciousness with each other and having a greater ability to communicate, collaborate, and connect as consciousness experienced automated brain-body activity. Because remember, consciousness is a distinct energetic component from neurobiological applications. And so how self-essence instinctively experiences a sense of self and automated interpretations of reality directly depends on how the brain and body are wired. And so my consciousness has never changed. I still have all of the exact same parts of my self-essence that I did when Kristin was living with adaptable consciousness condition and had over 20 different people in this brain and body. Every single part of my consciousness is still here exactly the same as it's always been. But the brain and the body, the wiring, the structures of the neurobiological social engagement system comprising the unconscious body-mind, all of that neural data has been completely transformed. And that's why my consciousness experiences life very differently now than it did several years ago. But while Kristin was living with adaptable consciousness condition, applying thesis number 29 helped break down amnesic barriers so different states of consciousness had a greater ability to connect, communicate, and collaborate. Simultaneously, it was helping to regulate the brain and body, to decrease stress responses, increase prefrontal cortex engagement, etc., gradually improving health and qualities of life. In 2020, Kristin was gradually starting to experience life through one state of consciousness. It was very, 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 very gradual, though. It was multiple states of consciousness for most of 2020, but without any amnesic barriers for the very first time. And there is still healing from chronic dissociative age regression as the brain and the body completed its final stages of neurodevelopment after fully processing all associated trauma responses and core neural wiring. During 2020, as consciousness taught the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments, these processes helped to bridge the disconnect between brain hemispheres, the mind and the body, and the different states of consciousness, further improving the health of the brain-body system and the connectivity of consciousness. And then in 2021, as consciousness taught the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, I was able to recover memories from my entire life, completely healing several forms of chronic amnesia. And so thesis number 29 has provided so many different styles of healing throughout so many different seasons of life. Kristin was a completely different person in 2018, a totally different person in 2019, a totally different person in 2020, a totally different person in 2021, and here I am in 2022, and I feel like myself, which I can't articulate how amazing it feels. It's a very indescribable feeling. I feel like I'm me. I feel like I'm me. I feel like I got all of me back when Kristin didn't know that she could ever feel like herself again. And so the application of thesis number 29 has provided so many different types of healing, transformation through so many different seasons. And so that's my favorite thing about this concept, is that the power is so expansive. It doesn't matter who or where you are, there are potential benefits for deep transformation. like deep transformation, whether someone's struggling with chronic stress responses, anxiety, depression, dissociation, chronic bouts of rage or anger, whether you just desire a greater ability for concentration or deeper sleep at night. Like, it doesn't matter who or where you are along the healing journey. Thesis number 29 has so much power to ignite profound healing in so many different types of ways, and that's why I'm so excited to share this. And if you'd like to explore more about my Implicit Revelations case study or personal healing journey, I have an expansive library collection available through Patreon that shares hundreds and thousands of pieces of content from 2018 to 2021. So please feel free to explore that if these topics interest you. The first regulatory protocol that encounters total transformation from consistent application of thesis number 29 is brainwave regulation. Brainwave regulation. Brainwave regulation is so incredible and so miraculous and so astounding and affects us in so many different ways that we don't necessarily think about. If our brainwaves are vibrating too slowly, then we might feel like we're sleepwalking and everything's just kind of surreal and dreamy-like, and we kind of feel like we're in a dream and can't totally wake up to reality. Or maybe our inner reality feels more real than our outer reality. And then if our brainwaves are vibrating too fast, then we might have racing thoughts or intrusive thoughts or feel anxious or just feel scatterbrained, or we're over here or we're over there. There might even be sensations of mania. So brainwave regulation really affects how our inner world operates within itself and how that inner world can connect and communicate with the outer world. And so it's like really important to have regulated brainwaves. Regulated brainwaves help us function and flow fluidly and smoothly. It helps to manage our thoughts so we're able to have thoughts that can help guide us through our moments, but we're not being bombarded by thoughts, or our thoughts aren't distracting us from realities. If our brainwaves are going too slow, then our thoughts might be this inner world that doesn't connect with the outer world, where there's all this inner talk, kind of like you're in your own daydream, but you can't really fully connect with reality as it unfolds. And if the brainwaves are going too fast, and there's going to be too many thoughts, and you can't function with anything because it's just a bombarding collage of never-ending streams of thoughts that keep interrupting each other. So brainwave regulation is super, mega, ultra important. And I discovered through the Implicit Revelations case study that when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, and there are daily practices created that apply this idea specifically, then the brain waves actually undergo a reconstructive process regarding their automated regulation. Brainwaves can learn to self-regulate to a greater degree of health and thrival through consistent application of thesis number 29. The second regulatory protocol that undergoes total transformation in the coolest way are digestive processes. When we eat food, there's like a quadrillion, bajadrillion things that happen. We have to have effective sensations of hunger and appetite to even know that we want or need food. And then there's the ability to taste and enjoy and be present. If we're not fully present, we won't be able to fully taste our food. And that can actually disrupt digestive processes because we're not in a totally relaxed state to encourage that rest and digest process. And then once the food goes down, it goes through all these complex processes to be effectively digested. And if that stuff ain't working super good, then we won't fully get the nutrients we need to have all the awesome energy we need to thrive to our maximum capacity. And all this other stuff could happen. So digestion is like clearly very important. You know, we eat food in the day, at least once a day, usually. And that affects how we're able to think and our energy levels and all kinds of stuff, all different aspects of health. So 2.5 years ago, Kristin would lose consciousness every single time that she ate food because of a severe dorsal vagal collapse. Core childhood trauma was associated with a dorsal vagal collapse that was activated every time Kristin ate food. And so she would eat food and boom, severe oxygen deprivation, boom, disconnect between reality, boom, all these trauma responses, boom, struggling to have digestion flow at all. Dorsal vagal collapse limits the body's ability to effectively digest food. And so Kristin was experiencing this every single day for several years. And this was just a couple years ago. 2-3 years ago, this was happening on a daily basis. And now I can eat food and every single bite is so magically heavenly. Everything is totally regulated. My digestive processes work better than they ever have in my entire life. And that has been transformed through the daily application of thesis number 29. As consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, regulatory protocols are totally transformed. And so my digestive systems are totally different. Literally, the physiology of how digestion happens is different because of daily application of thesis number 29. So when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments, the consistent application of these processes reconstruct the regulatory protocols that determine how the brain and the body automatically flow through various aspects of digestion or taking in food and making the most of its potentials for health benefits. In addition, how the brain and the body instinctively know how to communicate sensations of hunger and appetite are improved. There's a greater ability for the body to say, hey, I'm hungry, and then for the mind to perceive, oh, I have an appetite. If these processes aren't occurring effectively, then there might be sensations of hunger without an appetite, where you need food, but you can't really eat food. Or you might have an appetite but no hunger. Your body doesn't need food, but you feel like eating food all of the time. And so when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of healing internal attachments helps reconstruct regulatory protocols so that the brain and the body can effectively communicate sensations of hunger and appetite. The body knows when it actually needs food and is able to communicate that so the mind actually wants food. And along with this, in this process, there's a greater ability for instinctive food management or intuitive eating. And so some days we need different things. For example, some days I have one big meal. Some days I'll have 3 small meals. Some days I do intermittent fasting. Because my body communicates what it needs when it needs it. And so instead of just having these set meal times, I'm able to flow and my body can communicate what it needs when she needs it. Without this instinctive mind-body connection and effective communication throughout these complex systems, there might be instances where we eat just because it's time to eat, but maybe we don't actually need food. Or we keep eating long after the body has enough food simply because we're enjoying the food that we're eating, not necessarily because our body needs it. Our body had enough food, but the communication wasn't effectively there, and so we kept eating, not knowing how full we actually were. There might be times where you really, really want a snack, but the desire to eat food isn't because you need food, and it's actually coming from some other communication in the system. There's some misfire, and it's like, oh, I'm actually thirsty, or I'm actually tired, or oh, I really need a hug, but the communication wasn't effective, so the body's like, just give me a snack. And so there's all these different things that can happen where we're not completely attuned with what our body actually needs in terms of hunger and food. And to have the effectiveness of hunger and appetite fully balanced, it can really help create some healing change and allow the mind of our conscious awareness to be connected with the needs of our unconscious body, so that self-essence has more power to effectively be there for the brain and the body in the way that they actually need, and not necessarily in the way that maybe we've learned or developed habits with over the years. As the mind connects with the body and is able to effectively sense hunger and appetite more effectively, there's also a greater capacity to choose the direction of food. And so instead of just instinctively, automatically eating whatever you eat whenever you eat it, consciousness actually expands its power to choose more consciously what to eat, when to eat it, and how to eat it. And this can totally change the game of the healing journey through life, because how we eat, what we eat, when we eat it, why we eat it, affects a lot of different things, including energy levels, including our vitality and our passion and our ability to feel regulated emotions even. A lot of this is affected by how, what, when, and why we eat. And when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments improves these regulatory protocols so that consciousness has more power to effectively be there for the brain and the body, as there's more effective communication regarding digestion and needs of hunger and appetite. The third regulatory protocol that encounters profound transformation is the regulation of hormones and neurotransmitters. And this affects hunger and appetite, which we just talked about, but it affects so many other things as well. So when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing, healing, and restoring internal attachments totally reprograms the endocrine system and anything and everything affecting the regulation, release, and activity of hormones and neurotransmitters. A few years ago, when Kristin was living with adaptable consciousness condition, her different states of consciousness each had their own unique style of hormones and neurotransmitters.
Yeah, we all have different hormones.
Well, we all have the same hormone.
No, me and my parts experience different hormones. We figured that.
They were literally different people in this brain and body, and each state of consciousness encountered their own unique regulatory protocol of hormones and neurotransmitters. This state of consciousness and this state of consciousness did not experience the same styles of automated endocrine regulation. And you can explore more about adaptable consciousness condition in thesis number 10 of my Implicit Revelations case study. So that was where the exploration of the endocrine system, hormones, neurotransmitters, and the application of thesis number 29 began. Hormones and neurotransmitters affect a lot of different processes in the brain and the body, and a lot of different aspects regarding how we instinctively encounter emotions and sensations inside of us. One of the coolest features of applying thesis number 29 is how it can super mega powerfully stimulate super feel good hormones and neurotransmitters. Among the infinite potentials, there's a major oxytocin release, and everything inside of the brain and the body gets to feel super cuddly. It's the best way I could describe it. It's like the entire brain and body are getting little hugs inside of them. It's so profound, and it feels amazing, and it's so powerful. And not only does it ignite an oxytocin release during the present moment process of applying thesis number 29, but as you continue applying it consistently, it reprograms the brain and the body to transform the endocrine system, so there's greater regulation of hormones and neurotransmitters in the future. So even when you're not immediately in the moment of applying thesis number 29, if there's been this consistent application, then the endocrine system has a transformed sense of regulatory protocols and how it instinctively activates, releases, and flows different hormones and neurotransmitters will be improved to affect future experiences, even in moments where you're not directly applying the concept. It can majorly help reduce stress And this takes so many different forms. One basic example is a road rage style scenario. If someone's driving and they're stuck in traffic, the sensations of tension and frustration and anxiety and anger and impatience, a lot of that is affected by the regulation of hormones and neurotransmitters. If the brain and the body are in a state of serotonin and oxytocin, you're not going to care if you're stuck in traffic because you're feeling good. The process of reconstructing regulatory protocols in relation with the endocrine system and hormones and neurotransmitters helps reduce stress levels in all types of scenarios. All types. Because how we instinctively encounter life depends on how consciousness is experiencing brain-body wiring. And if the endocrine system is reconstructed and has different regulatory protocols that have all these happy chemicals and lower levels of any stress chemicals, then if we instinctively encounter a stressful situation, there's going to be less stress. Because the causality of stress isn't the situation. The causality of stress is how our brain and our body are reacting to the situation. So if our endocrine system is reprogrammed and we get in a stressful moment, then we're not going to feel so stressed because the stress chemicals aren't going off. And so when we apply thesis number 29, we can actually help to reconstruct regulatory protocols affecting automated hormone and neurotransmitter activity and reduce stress levels in all types of scenarios. And so if someone's living with chronic stress responses where there's just like anxiety, terror, fear, rage, then it's going to help to bring those levels down. And if someone's not encountering chronic stress responses, then it's going to still have this great foundational programming. So if there is any kind of stressful scenario, there won't be stress involved because stress doesn't come from situations. It comes from brain-body activity. And so if we can reprogram the brain and the body so that the endocrine system is like, here, have a bunch of happy, cuddly chemicals no matter what's happening, then life is going to be like super magical and not stressful. And so among the infinite benefits, the third regulatory protocol that encounters total transformation is activity of hormones and neurotransmitters, especially through the endocrine system. And if that's reconstructed, it's going to improve happiness and sensations of love and connection, especially through oxytocin and serotonin release. And it's going to reduce stress by regulating those different stress chemicals that might go off, whether they're triggered by situations or whether they're just being regularly activated because that's what the regulatory protocol says to do right now. And so reprogramming the endocrine system through consistent application of thesis number 29 can profoundly improve quality of life and health on so many different levels. Along these lines, applying thesis number 29 totally transforms regulatory protocols of circadian rhythms, including melatonin production and all the different many various components that affect circadian rhythms. How our body knows to be tired and go to sleep at night, have an ability to fall asleep easily, quickly, peacefully, smoothly, and have an ability to stay asleep in a certain state of depth of sleep. Like you could be a light sleeper and you maybe stay asleep, but you didn't get into the deeper sleep states. So your brain and body didn't have a chance to be restored to the capacity that it's intended to experience and acquire while sleeping. And so the body's ability to get into that super deep sleep state and stay there for many hours. And then the ability to wake up and have a sense of energy. There's so many different components here. There's so many different components that affect sleep. And then, of course, sleep affects energy during the rest of the day. And how energy's accessed and used during the day affects the next night's sleep. So there's all this different stuff that goes on, right? And so circadian rhythms are this very complex thing with all these different features. But I've discovered that when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments transforms circadian rhythms. The brain and the body naturally learn to fall asleep peacefully, to stay asleep peacefully, to reach the deepest depths of sleep states, and wake up with a sense of rested orientation. Instead of like waking up with lethargy and you're just like, nah, I just want to lay in bed all day, I don't have any energy, I want to stay asleep. Or you wake up in a state of anxiety, like, oh my God, I have all this energy, now I'm ready to go, like a wired state. You wake up in this calm, peaceful, rested state where you have energy accessible, but it's not an overly energized thing right away. You can ease into the day. And so all of these different components of circadian rhythms, and then having energy through the day and not needing to rest during the day, and yet being able to have moments of peace during the day. Okay, so circadian rhythm goes, and during the day, if you get really, really tired, nothing wrong with that, nothing wrong with naps by any means. But circadian rhythms affect that energy level. And I've discovered that when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments, when applied on a consistent basis, transforms the circadian rhythms so that the body has more consistent regulated energy during the day. It's so profound. It's genuinely incredible. And so there's less need for naps or sleep, but there's also less anxious, angsty energy. Like you're not just wired all day, but you're not tired all day. It's this very regulated energy during the day. And so the quantity and the quality of sleep and how sleep impacts energy levels, all of these components of the circadian rhythm are improved and the regulatory protocols restored and expanded through consistent application of thesis number 29. A surprising discovery was that applying thesis number 29 can actually improve brain hemispheric connectivity. When consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments expands energetic communication between the brain hemispheres, further igniting potential capabilities of the corpus callosum. So there's all this stuff going on in the right brain, there's all this stuff going on in the left brain, and then there's all this stuff going on in the bridge between the brain hemispheres, the corpus callosum. And if stuff isn't flowing well here, or stuff isn't flowing well here, or stuff isn't flowing well here, then the brain hemispheres will have a difficult time effectively contributing to automated conversations of consciousness, which profoundly impacts personal experience, to say the least. 2 years ago, there was so much disconnectivity and independent activity between my brain hemispheres that they were experienced by completely different persons inside of this brain and body, which created some miraculously unique experiences. During original stages of neurodevelopment, life primarily happens through the right brain hemisphere, and the left brain hemisphere gradually develops, and then they start to learn how to connect through a very gradual process. And a big component that affects this aspect of brain development is attachment development. Nature and nurture collide, and the abstract brain-body blueprint is sculpted and shaped through experiences of love, especially from parent-child bonding, which is the foundation of the neurobiological social engagement system. And so how the two brain hemispheres originally learned to communicate through the original stages of neurodevelopment directly depend on attachment development. Thus, when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of healing internal attachments helps reprogram automated regulation of brain hemispheric connectivity. 2 years ago, there was so much independent activity. When I would look at clouds, That experience happened in my right brain hemisphere without any connection to my left brain hemisphere. The experience of looking at the sky is different now than it was 2 years ago. Hugely. Because of the regular application of thesis number 29. It's incredible. The two brain hemispheres originally learned to communicate through attachment development. And now, no matter who we are or where we're at in life, whether someone is 20 years old, 50 years old, 80 years old, or anywhere in between or beyond, regardless of who or where we are, when the essence of self, which is consciousness, teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments, that process indirectly and automatically helps to expand regulatory protocols to improve brain hemispheric connectivity. So you don't have to go in and directly work with the brain hemispheres to help improve how they communicate. Granted, there are a lot of different ways to improve brain hemispheric connectivity directly. For example, there's a specific mirror practice that my doctor was able to apply that was traditionally used on stroke patients. And when Kristin had severe independent brain hemispheric connectivity, that was something that helped that healing journey. So there are other ways to expand brain hemispheric connectivity that are more direct regarding that immediate regulatory protocol. But the application of thesis number 29 does indirectly assist that process. It might be subtle, it might be minor, it might be gradual, whereas other treatments that specifically focus on brain hemispheric connectivity are going to have more immediate cutthroat results. But regardless of here where we are, we could always use better communication between our brain hemispheres. That always improves the quality of life and our ability to experience the fullness of all that we are and all that life is intended to be. And so when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of nurturing internal attachments indirectly improves brain hemispheric communication. The brain hemispheres have a greater capacity to operate within themselves and connect through the corpus callosum. The sixth regulatory protocol that encounters profound transformation is connectivity between the forebrain and hindbrain, specifically improving mind-body connection. How the sensations of a conscious mind are able to connect, communicate, and collaborate with a variety of components of the unconscious body depends on how these regions of the brain are operating within itself. And so 2 years ago, there was zero, I'm talking zero, a big fat giant zero connection between this mind and body, which affected hundreds of components of personal experience. But as consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself, the process of healing internal attachments creates brand new regulatory protocols so that the mind and the body have an ability to connect, communicate, and collaborate. And among the details of this are improved connectivity between front parts of the brain and back parts of the brain, basically the forebrain and the hindbrain. Stuff that's a little bit closer to the conscious mind and stuff that's a little bit closer to the unconscious body, and how they bridge worlds and communicate. In relation with my 5 layers model and diagram, encouraging connectivity between the forebrain and the hindbrain, or the mind and the body, also encourages connectivity between the observational self and the inner life partner, and the inner child and the deepest regions of the unconscious body-mind. Mind-body connectivity is like a whole other topic that could go on for a bajillion years. It affects everything from our ability to connect with our physical needs, hunger, thirst, sleep, energy, needing to use the restroom, a million different things about just basic bodily needs, to abilities to engage specific muscles if you're trying to do a certain workout or exercise, the ability to consciously connect and engage certain muscles in certain ways at different times. All of these things depend on mind-body connectivity, or abilities for the conscious awareness in front parts of the brain to connect with all the different other components of the brain and body to communicate. And these regulatory protocols are improved indirectly, even if you don't specifically focus on mind-body connection. That experiences indirect healing, restoration, and improved expansive transformation when applying these ideas effectively and consistently. While we're talking about the front parts of the brain, let's explore the effects of this idea on the prefrontal cortex. Prefrontal cortex is awesome. That part of our brain is like so magical and wonderful and helps do all kinds of things. Like, I couldn't be standing here talking the way that I am if my prefrontal cortex wasn't telling me some super cool stuff unconsciously. Our prefrontal cortex is very important. The front parts of our brain are very important. And in association with them, there's also the mohawk of self-awareness, these regions kind of in the middle-ish parts of our brain. This references work by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. There's the mohawk of self-awareness and the prefrontal cortex and the frontal parts of our brain. And these help with so many different things. They help us to be present. They help us to be mindful. They help us have power to make conscious choices rather than choices being directly dependent on unconscious activity of implicit procedural memories unfolding beyond awareness. Activity in these parts of our brain helps us be aware and engaged and have a sense of personal presence with our own self and with whatever we're experiencing. It helps us concentrate and focus and have abilities to choose how we're engaging in ourselves and our lives. It expands the gap between stimulus and response. It provides sensations of awareness that help life be the fullness and magic and expansive quality that it's intended to be. And when consciousness teaches the brain and the body to socially engage with itself with an emphasis on nurturing internal attachments, the regulatory protocols affecting the prefrontal cortex, different aspects of the front parts of the brain, and the mohawk of self-awareness, all of these different aspects of brain activity are improved and expanded indirectly, automatically, and gradually. Which is cool because it means there's no limit to the potential. Like, even if the brain's like already kind of doing pretty good or whatever, like there's still room for expansion. And thesis number 29 provides that. And so no matter who we are or where we're at in our lives, we can always use more effective activity of our prefrontal cortex. We can always use an amplification of the health and well-being of our mohawk of self-awareness. It always can expand life to even further capacities of greatness and wholeness and vitality and just the incredible juiciness that life is intended to be. And so regardless of whether someone's struggling with chronic traumatic stress, where there's total deactivation of these regions of the brain on a regular basis, or whether someone is just wanting to increase their abilities for concentration or focused flow or the ability to just feel more deeply in the sensations of life, regardless of who or where we're at, there are potential benefits when consistently and effectively applying these ideas. It expands and improves the regulatory protocols affecting the prefrontal cortex, front parts of the brain, and the mohawk of self-awareness. The greatest benefit of this, let's see. The greatest benefit in relation, let's see, how do I say that? Or it could affect us more unconsciously, where there are aspects of consciousness far beyond awareness who don't know I don't know what I was just going to say. I don't know. I'm alive. It's weird. Being alive is fucking weird. Being alive is weird. Memory data. Reconstructing neural wiring from every year. Oh, yeah. What did I say? Okay. Anything's possible. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. It's so quiet. Being alive is weird. I don't know what I'm doing. Can I go to bed? No, we've come this far. Come on, baby. Oh, God. I really don't know if I want to include that. Let's just jump into the good stuff. Okay, now let's dive into the good stuff. The first regulatory protocol that I'm too excited! Stop it! As explored in earlier videos discussing thesis number 29, the process of... Let's see. No, man. Mic drop. I guess that's all.